it does take place in Vermont, so there's also that. Vermont is all fall vibes, according to Donna Tartt. What is up, BookTube? It is Monty, and today I'm here to talk about The Best Laid Plans by Cameron Lund. I was sent this by the publisher in order to read it and talk about it with you guys, so I fulfilled my part of the deal. They sent it, I read it, we're talking about it, everything is great. As always, all the thoughts expressed in this following discussion are my own. Just because it was for free hasn't really influenced anything. I have really just one topic I want to talk about. But before we get into that, the brief synopsis is we have a main character named Keely, who is a high school senior. We're looking at mostly her last semester of high school in this novel. She meets a college guy named Dean. She falls for the college guy named Dean. To Keely's knowledge, she's the last virgin in her friend group, and she kind of gets it into her head that that would have some kind of negative ramifications with Dean. And so she looks for advice, and part of that includes asking her friend Andrew to kind of help her with that. And as I relay that plot to you, that's what was relayed to me. I believe that's the plot synopsis even on Goodreads. I find that plot synopsis to be a little bit misleading because it's not like it happens. Like, those are definitely beats of the book, but I don't think that they play out quite the way I was expecting them to. For the first 100 or so pages, I wasn't sure if I liked the fact that this was a YA book. I wasn't sure. Like, I liked the book. I liked Cameron Lund's writing style. I appreciated all of that. But I had this hesitation coming where I was like, this is being published by Razorbill. It's, you know, a Penguin teen imprint. Like, I wasn't sure. Like, I felt that it should have been at like an adult imprint, with like a young adult crossover appeal type situation, because it just felt that certain aspects of characters' actions and motivations were not being challenged in a way that I thought was kind of appropriate. I very much felt that some characters' actions were being presented as normal and typical when they were really manipulative and toxic and just all around disgusting to have to read. And because they weren't being properly challenged on the page, I felt that just because I knew that this was going to be in the hands of younger readers, or I mean, to be fair, like, Keely is an 18-year-old protagonist, so like maybe someone in that age group. But because like those behaviors weren't being challenged, I was very just uncomfortable with it. There was also the added layer of the fact that this was a young adult novel, that I don't want to say there are any kind of graphic or explicit scenes, but as an adult reader who is like 24 years old, reading about teenagers getting it on was a little bit uncomfortable. And that's nothing against the book. I think for the target demographic, like, that's fine. Like, teenagers have sex. They should be able to read about teenagers having sex. And like, Keely is 18. But some of the other characters we have that we walk in on, I don't know really where their age falls. And so when I'm sitting over here reading these things, it's like, sure, this is cute, and I think that younger readers could vibe with this, but I'm 24. I don't want to think about a 17-year-old main character friends, but I don't want to think about any of that. And it's like, portions of that were also a little bit like, this is very clearly not for me, so we're just gonna get through it as best we can. But I really want to narrow in on the toxic behavior of the novel, because the only I wound up giving this 4 to 5 stars. I probably enjoyed it a 5-star amount. I think that this is definitely a kind of a thing that I really like in a book. That I like this sort of a situation. But I think that there were definitely, the way that the love interests were handled was a little bit poor. So we're gonna kind of toe into some spoilers in terms of love interest dynamics and situations and things. So if you want to leave here, that's fine. Down below, I will leave a link to my Goodreads review, which I don't think is really, I talk about things very broadly, and I consider it vaguely, so you can just read there for my main hits. But yeah, I did enjoy it. I do recommend it. I do think that there is value in this story. I just want to talk about how the love interest situation and how the promise of the premise played out. So if you don't want any of that, because this book doesn't come out until April, I understand. You feel free to click out, come back later. I do think you should still read this. I do think that it still is highly entertaining, and a great contemporary to keep tucked away in the back of your mind for the next round of the Contemporary-thon. Let's talk messy love interest. So Keeley falls for our love interest, Dean. And almost from jump, I was very uncomfortable with Dean, because Dean is a 20-year-old college junior. And he knows that when they meet properly at the video store that Keeley is, well, I don't know if he knows she's freshly 18, but he for sure knows that she's a high school senior. And I think that any college student trying to fuck with a high school senior is just automatically not something I was really ever going to be invested in. I think when I read the premise, I was expecting it to be like a college freshman type situation where, sure, there might be like a minimal age gap, but it wouldn't feel skeezy to me. Dean's interests in her always felt skeezy. It was always written as a skeezy thing, and it was really hard to get past. Like, there were several moments over the course of them being together where he was very sexually manipulative. That was a part that was not, I felt, being properly challenged by the characters. Like, you would see Keeley be uncomfortable in those situations, but then we would move past it and we wouldn't really challenge it. And if it was brought up to like Keeley's friend and she was talking to her friend about it, they wouldn't really talk about how that was unacceptable behavior. It just seemed to be like behavior that was normalized. And it's not that I think that men are like these pristine beings who are never creepy toward anybody. I think that that is demonstrably untrue. It's not that I felt that Keeley's experiences weren't experiences that a lot of people have had, but I felt that they weren't being portrayed as things that shouldn't be happening, and that if these things are happening, you should leave and not be trying to find ways to make that kind of a situation work. You know what I mean? Like, if the person you're interested in is unbuttoning their pants while you're at work, like, maybe you should find somewhere else to be. If you're telling your partner, oh, we don't have a condom, we shouldn't do this, he shouldn't be making a joke like, oh, so I can just put it in raw. Like, there were so many moments, like, if you're asking your partner to buy you something, he shouldn't be like, how are you going to pay me back? Like, what do you mean how? Like, I'm going to give you the money that you, like, what do you mean? Like, there were so many times where I was like, this behavior is just really disgusting. And Dean repeatedly was making these comments that, again, I feel men probably make. Like, I think that all of these experiences that Keeley has, I think that a lot of people have those experiences, but like, they made me want to throw up. They were just completely disgusting, and I feel like they were meant to be. I feel like you were not ever really meant to root for Dean and Keeley. But on the flip side, our alternate, Andrew, who in the premise is highlighted as this character meant to sort of help her on this like deflowering process, I didn't really ever get a romantic vibe from them. They were definitely very platonic up through the first half of the book, the first 150 or so pages. And then after she asks him to help her, I felt that that's when their relationship took a turn, and suddenly everything was being coded as like romantic, and feelings and this like long history between them was romanticized. And I was like, I didn't get those vibes in the first half of the book. You literally just flipped the whole script and okay, now suddenly they're in love with each other, but it's kind of complicated. And then it was just unnecessary. And there was a revelation in the third act of the book about Andrew and what Andrew had been doing for years. This wasn't something that he just randomly did. He had been doing this since the 7th grade, the 8th grade, thereabouts. So a good 5 years. And I found it to be completely unforgivable. I found it to be, again, disgusting, toxic behavior, But because we were meant to be rooting for this relationship, it was kind of just brushed under the rug. And I really think that Keely should have ended this book alone and single, ready to get all the California dick her heart desired. Because the way it ends, I felt it was disgusting to me. I felt that the person that she chose was not only the wrong person, but there was no right person. That's just how I felt. And I understand, like, there's, like, this weird thing where, like, but you gave it 4 stars, and you saying that you really enjoyed it. I did. I think that Cameron Lund is probably going to be one of my new favorite contemporary authors. I think that she writes really fun, digestible, addictive stories that I know I'm going to want to read in the future. I think her character work here was superb. I think that sure, there wasn't much, like, there was a little bit of a plot. I mean, as much as losing your virginity can be a plot line, like, I think in another story that probably would have been, like, a B plot, but I think that the way that we spent time, the scenes that we got, I felt were all very well paced, even though it meant skipping through the final year of her high school experience, the final semester or so, with, you know, time jumps and things. I felt that it was all executed very well. I didn't think that it was rushed or fast-paced or any of those things. I think that for the story that she wanted to write, it was good, except for, you know, we needed a happily ever after. And in that, I felt that it wasn't the best. But I do wish that things had been challenged before the final act of the book. There's a scene after on Keely's prom night where we finally get some challenges to the behavior that we've been that have been exhibiting unchallenged throughout the whole course of the novel. The third act confronts a lot of things that have been festering over the course of the book, and it really does read like a screenplay in that sense, where it's the third act and it's at a school dance, so here's where everything's gonna, you know, come to a head. And I enjoyed it. I really did. And again, like I said, I do think that Cameron Lund crafted some really great characters. I think that some of the banter between people was really interesting. Again, Dean made me have physical reactions to things that he was saying. So I do think that she is talented, and I do think that this is a book that people should read. I do think at the end of the day that this is probably a book that a lot of young adult readers should have. Like, I think that it works in the way that it's being marketed, despite the hesitations I had at the beginning. I do think that they'll be able to discern the fact that this is not behavior that you should appreciate in a partner. And I do think that even Andrew's behavior, I think they'll be able to take issue with, even if at the end of it, you know, at the end of the book, they are still happy with how everything settles. So that's my thoughts. I know it sounds like I really hated it. I know it sounds like I had some major complaints. To me, it feels that way. To me, it feels like I just sat here for like 20 minutes and told you all the things I didn't like about the book. But I did like it. I enjoyed every minute that I spent. Not every minute, because again, those Dean dialogues, I had to bust out my red highlighter. But I did like this. I do think that readers will enjoy this. Like I said, this comes out on April 7th. So pre-order a copy, put it on hold at your library. It's a good book. It is a good book, even if bits made me uncomfortable. It fulfilled the promise of the premise, even if my assumptions about how that promise would be met were misguided and incorrect going in. So leave your thoughts down below if this was something that was, you know, on your radar, if you were looking forward to it. If you've read an arc of it, let me know your thoughts down there. I don't really have anything else to say, so I'll see you guys soon in another video, whenever that happens to be. But until then, and until next time,